Hey, this is Darrin Isaak, coming to you live from Montana. I'm in my lab making colloidal silver. I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do it. So pay attention. I'll put a lot of links in after we're done and all this kind of stuff. So just hope you enjoy what we're doing. I'm going to kind of break in, do different shots and stuff, and hopefully everything turns out to be great. But here we go. All right, welcome to my laboratory. It is boiling. Can you hear it? All right, so here I'm going to go ahead and take off the top. Let me, if I can do it with one hand or not. Here, hold on. All right, so here's my contraption. This is my Colloidal Silver Generator. I'm going to start at the end. This is actually a batch that is already done. So I'm going to show you how to take it out, filter it, put it into a bottle for safekeeping. Then I'll go back and I'll go through all the processes of how to put it together, where to buy the material. So I'm going to change camera views now so I can take this all apart, put it on long view, and then I'll come back later and then I'll show you everything that I did to put it together. All right. Here's just kind of a quick snapshot of some of the stuff that I use. Cool. All right, so here we go. We're going to start from the back. I'm going to take one batch out, and then I'm going to put it in the jar for safekeeping. So here's how we do it. First, you always got to make sure you unplug everything. And I'm not going to go into the components just yet because I'm going to do that later. Okay. So here you'll see I've got a piece of wood with my silver rods coming out. We're going to put those over here on a piece of paper. And here's my silver. You can see it's very clear. There's no color to it because it's not colloidal silver, it's ionic silver. This is the stuff that you want right here. So what we do when we're going to put this away is I'm actually going to filter it to get the silver so that comes off the rods out. So I'm going to take some distilled water. We're going to run it through 3 filters. These are organic, unbleached filters. So I put 3 of them in here. I run a little bit of distilled water through it so that it makes sure that there's no residual stuff on the filters. And once I've got that run through just a little bit of distilled water there, then I take my... Actually, we'll put it in this one because this one's already got some in it. You'll notice I keep this in a brown paper bag. And that's because light affects ionic silver. So you want to keep your ionic silver in a glass jar in the dark, at room temperature. Don't put it in the refrigerator. Don't refrigerate it. It'll keep for a long time. If you're going to mail it to somebody because they need it, you can put it in one of the... I don't have my jar in here. I'll have to get it later. You can put it in a plastic bottle that is recommended for long-term storage, like the bottles that hydrogen peroxide comes in. Those are great storage bottles to send stuff in. So anyway, so this is silver that's already been done. So I'm going to add to it. So I take my little filter. Here, let's do it over here. That way you guys can, I don't know if you can still see it or not. And I take my funnel, and then I filter through the top. Because you'll see in the bottom here, there's a little bit of the silver rods while you're making your silver. So you don't want this, you don't want to be drinking this. It's not going to hurt you or anything, but you don't want to drink it. So you have your pure silver ions going into your main batch. So we'll just keep draining it. And I'll probably fast forward this here so we can get through it all. All right, so there we have now a full Captain Morgan Ionic silver bottle. You can use any glass jar you want. You can keep them in the quart jars, whatever you want to do. Just make sure they're sterile and clean. I clean them out with hydrogen peroxide. I wash them, then hydrogen peroxide, then pour distilled water in them, rinse them out so that they're perfectly clean and sterilized. All right, so there, now we have it. We take this, we put this in a brown paper bag, or you can take duct tape and wrap it around, do whatever. You just want to keep it out of sunlight, then you put it underneath a cabinet or in a cabinet somewhere. Do not refrigerate it. All right, here are all the pieces of the puzzle that you're going to need in order to make your own colloidal silver. So let's start with the two main things. First of all, you're going to need pure distilled water. Let me put this cap back on here. Pure distilled water. It is very, 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 very important that you do not use anything other than pure distilled water. Don't use mineral water, don't use tap water, and do not add anything to it. Some people add salt to it because it speeds up the process, but then you wind up making silver chloride and not ionic silver. You don't want to drink silver chloride. That's the same stuff that they develop film with. So don't do it. Let me repeat that. Only distilled water. What did I say? Only distilled water? Only distilled water. Okay. Then the next thing that you need silver rods. So I buy it like this. I get it off Amazon from a company called Atlas Nova. I buy it, they send it to me, and I buy about 2 feet of it at a time. And then what I do is I take and I straighten it out and I make it into silver rods like that to use in the silver solution. So the silver needs to be 0.9999% pure silver. Do not use soldering iron silver or anything other than pure 0.9 to the 4/9 silver. It's very important. So those are the only two ingredients to make ionic silver. Distilled water and pure as you can buy silver rods, okay? And then I cut the rods so that they fit my jar. So here's my jar. So that they'll fit inside the jar, just so that they're not touching the bottom of the glass, okay? And I'll show you this here in a minute in the process. Another couple things that you're going to need is a TDS tester. Now the TDS tester it's a total dissolved tester. Let me get this out of here. This is one of the ones that I use. What it does is when you turn it on, it reads parts per million. I use this so that I can get a base. And so then what I do is I use this to test my distilled water first to know that it's either 0 and sometimes you'll get distilled water that'll read 1 part per million. And if you get anything over 1 part per million, then you are using bad distilled water. And I've had that happen where I bought other distilled water like this one right here. That was 2 to 3 parts per million coming right out of the bottle. So that one you don't want to use for your final solution. You can use it for cleaning stuff and rinsing stuff, but you want to use one that has a better parts per million, 0 or no more than 1, okay? So you've got your TDS tester. Then the other components that you're going to want to use is an aquarium air pump. I got this, I think I bought this on Amazon as well, but you can buy them at a local fish store or whatever. Just make sure they're clean. You get some tubing that fits on the end because you're going to use that as your bubbler. What the bubbler does is it improves the solution and it helps actually speed up the process. Because when you start electrolysis with making your silver, because there's no minerals or anything in the water, it takes a long time to get started. It will take me generally between 20 and 30 hours to make 1 quart of silver, okay? Then the other thing you're going to need, and this is the mechanism, is you're going to need a transformer. This is a 9-volt, 300 milliamp intercell. I buy these. Let me see if I can focus it in here. It's not focusing. Why is it not focusing? There we go. And I get those on Amazon as well. And I bought 2 of them. I've been using that same one right there for probably 6 years, 7 years maybe. They don't go bad. I've used those same rods right there for probably over a year already. So you don't need a lot of silver. You're not going to go through a lot because you're only taking the ions off of it. You're not actually melting the silver down. That's why this stuff is so pure and you're only getting the ions. The reason why I use a 300 milliamp transformer is because it's very low current and it slows the process down and it doesn't break the silver off into bigger nanoparticles. It breaks them down into really small particles and gives you a lot more ions bang for your buck. Then you're going to need a piece of wood, and I just made a new one. You just cut a couple holes in it. You put a couple of screws on it just to kind of keep it on. You take this out of here, and then it just goes on there so that you put your bubbler through and then your silver rods to go through it. So that's what you need there. You're going to need some hydrogen peroxide because I use hydrogen peroxide to make sure just before I put anything in any jars, I use it to disinfect anything. So the process that I usually use is that when I'm starting brand new, I wash everything with soap and water. Then I pour distilled water in it to rinse it. Then I pour hydrogen peroxide in it or over it, and I clean all the rods, all the pieces. Then I final rinse with distilled water before I put the actual solution in, okay? Now, at times you'll want to use a voltmeter so that you can check to make sure that you're actually getting your current correctly. And you'll know if all of a sudden after 2 or 3 days you don't have any parts per million in there, you'll be like, what's going on? So I always just kind of test this when I start my first batch. You'll need a couple of glass jars. What? Cinnamon whiskey? No, that's silver in there, baby. Some paper towels. I use paper towels to wipe the rods off because so you'll see here in a minute when I do this is that when I pull those rods out there to clean them, because we just did a batch that came off, you'll see that black stuff is silver oxide. And so you just wipe the rods off about once every hour while you're making your silver, and it takes the silver oxide off, because what happens is as that silver oxide builds up on your rods, it creates like a little bit of a sludge that goes into the bottom of the jar. It's not toxic or anything. It's not going to kill you or anything. It's just part of the process. But what happens is that it inhibits then the electrical current going through the rods in the electrolysis process. So about once an hour, I'll stop the process, take the rods out, I clean them off with a paper towel, and then I put them back in. Okay, it's also important that you make sure you wash your hands and keep your hands clean and keep all your stuff clean and disinfected so that you don't infect it or put anything in there that could contaminate it. It's pretty hard to do. So anyway, I think that is it. Oh, and I have a box that I put over the system because you don't want sunlight while you're making your silver, because sunlight, like I said, affects the ionic silver and actually reduces its potency over time. So I keep everything in the dark. I keep my silver in a brown paper bag in a cabinet. That's a full bottle right there that we just finished. And I think, you're gonna need, forgot, some brown unbleached coffee filters to filter your silver for the final filter when you put it into your bottle. And you're gonna need a little funnel. Just a little funnel so that you can put it into smaller jars and stuff like that. I think that's about it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the camera back up on the tripod, and I'm going to just show you, I'm going to actually start a new batch and show you how I do the rods and everything, so you can just kind of watch. All right, here we go. All right, so now we're going to start a new batch. So this was the jar from the previous batch. So I'm just going to rinse it out. Since it's already been cleaned and sterilized, it doesn't need to be cleaned and sterilized again, because the silver that was in here is not contaminated, and bacteria can't grow in the silver or any kind of pathogen. So I'm just going to rinse it. Then I'm going to take some distilled water. Swirl it around. We're going to rinse it off. And our jar is ready to go. So now I've got my jar ready. Now I just did put together, here, we'll put this over here. I just put together a new piece of wood. So I'm going to take this all apart really quick, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to put it all back together. So I'll take a paper towel, and I've already washed my hands, so I'm all clean and sterile, so don't worry about it. You just take the rod and you put it in and you rub it around. What you're going to see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can see the silver oxide that comes off. Okay? So you clean those. And you can use a scouring pad or anything. You just don't want to use soap or water or anything like that. Because you got to remember, the silver is not, doesn't harbor any bacteria. So there's bacteria cannot grow on silver. Okay? Dies. So now I've got my two rods are clean. Now we're going to put together our new bubbler. So I just put the hose through like that. But before we do that, we're going to take our good distilled water and we're actually going to test it really quick. To make sure that our base is good. So we're going to take the TDS tester, we're going to turn it on, and right now it says 0, okay? And we're going to put it in here, and we'll see if I can get over here so you can see it. And I put it into the mark where it says, and you can read the directions, whichever TDS tester you want to get, and it still shows 0. That's perfect, that's what we want. We want a really good base to start with, okay? So this distilled water is good. Turn it off. Fill it up just to the mouth of the rim there, not all the way to the top. We're going to test the water one more time. Good, and we're still at 0, so we're good. Turn our tester off. So now we've got a good starting solution of 0 parts per million of total dissolved solids. That's what TDS stands for, total dissolved solids in our water. So I don't need my wire because I already have my wire. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and put our cap on. Then we're going to take our transformer. Now one thing I did forget to tell you when I was showing you the parts. So this transformer, when I bought it, it comes with different clips on the end. So what I did was I took and I cut the ends off and I went down to Radio Shack or I forget, Ace Hardware or whatever, and I got some alligator clips. And I just put two, I put a red one and a black one so I knew which one was my positive and negative. Now it doesn't matter. You can put the negative or the positive on either side of the silver rods. It's not going to make any difference. The reason why I put the colors on is because I like to switch every time I take the rods out. I change and I put the positive on the other rod because what you'll find is over time, one of the rods, the positive side, because that's the side that sheds the silver oxide, it will start to get thinner faster. And so you want your rods to kind of stay the same throughout your process. So you don't have to keep changing one rod out all the time. You change them kind of both at the same time as a pair. It's not super critical, but that's just the way I like to do it. So we've got our transformer. We've got our two rods. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one rod, put it down the hole. We'll take one radiator clip, which is the positive. We just kind of clip it to the top. So there's about 1/4 of an inch or so. You just want to make sure that the silver rod on the bottom doesn't touch the glass anywhere, on the inside or down below. And what you'll find is sometimes the rods are bent a little bit, so I kind of twist them so they kind of curve away from the glass, so they kind of hang in a more straight down position. Now let's go put the other rod in. And we'll clip the black one to this one. And the next time I change the rods out, I'll put the black one on that one and the red one on this one. Okay. And I'll just double check to make sure that my rods are kind of hanging down straight. And if you got to take it out and bend it, take it out and bend it a little bit. Like this one here, I'm going to take out and bend just a little bit. Oops. I dropped it inside. We're going to bend it just a little so I can kind of control a little bit more of the space between the rods, just so that it's not touching the glass on the sides or on the bottom. Okay, so now we're ready to go. So now I go in and I just plug in my transformer, plug in my bubbler, and we're making silver. Now, what we can do too is we can now check. We put our voltmeter on its lowest reading on the AC/DC side, which is 10 on this one, and put the red to the red and the black to the black, and we got current, and we're right at about 300 milliamps. So I know that my transformer is working correctly and it's throwing the right amperage. Okay. Now there's all kinds of fancy things that people do. They put switches in and they do diodes and all kinds of stuff. You don't need to do that. All right, turn your thing back off so you don't lose your battery. And then I take my box, it's just a regular little old box, and I put it over the top. And then I'll leave it for an hour. And I'll come back in an hour and I'll check it. I'll take my TDS monitor out, check to see if the total dissolved solids meter has come up. Usually it doesn't come up for the first 4, 5 to 10 hours. It can take a long time to get that first reading. But as you progress and you get more silver ions and silver particles in your water, it will generate faster. And then so usually after about 20 to 30 hours, I'll come in and it'll be at 4, and an hour later it'll be at 5. But the first to get to 0 to 1 and 0 to 2 can take a day and a half, depending upon how you do it. Now, I take this and run this only during the day when I'm home, so I can check it. And then I turn it off at night and I leave it. Then I come back in the morning, clean the rods, and I start all over, and I just kind of let it go through its process for another day, keep checking it every couple hours just to see where it's at. It's not super critical, but that's how I do it. And after about 20 to 30 hours of running the generator, it will produce a full quart of 5 parts per million, and that's the number that I try to get to, because that's about all you really need for the effectiveness for anything. Because when you do the 5 parts per million of when it's checking for this the dissolved solids, that means that you have about 500,000 ions in it. It's a lot of ions, silver ions. So it's pretty potent. So you don't need a lot of the silver particles in there. You're really looking for the ions. So you'll notice that my solution is clear. You're going to see a lot of silver that that you buy on the market that's got an amber color to it. A lot of that's marketing and gimmicking. They put proteins and different things in them to color them up, or they're using transformers that have a higher electrical output. They make their silver in about 30 minutes to an hour, but it's throwing off bigger nanoparticles, and you're getting a lot more of the actual silver. You actually get more silver, which is not bad for you, because we're not taking this on a daily basis. This is just for like the flu and colds and those kind of things. But so I prefer to use the lower amperage, take longer to build it and to make it. That way I get a much higher quality and a much more pure. All right. So now that I've told you and showed you how to make silver, ionic silver, now let me share with you how you use it, okay? So the number one way, let me move my mic down a little bit here so it's not so hot. The number one way that we use it is with a nebulizer. This is an Omron Comp air nebulizer. We bought it on Amazon. It's real simple. What you do is you take your silver, you put it in this little reservoir here, you turn the pump on. Here, I can't do it. Can't do it in here. I don't have another plug. Anyway, you turn the pump on and it atomizes the silver in this little, and it's only that much of silver. So it's not very much. That 1 quart will probably last a family through a full illness if everybody gets sick, okay? So silver goes a long way. You don't use a lot. You use just a little bit. But the reason why you want to use a nebulizer is because you want to get it into your lungs. By putting any kind of medicine, whatever. There's people that use nebulizers for other medicines as well, but for silver, it puts the silver directly into your lungs, which means it goes right into your bloodstream. It's the most efficient way to get medicine actually into your bloodstream other than intravenously. So nebulizing, that's great. Now, you can also drink it. So this is the silver that we did earlier, right here. You only need a cap full. So you take a cap full, not very much. Take one little cap full, hold it under your tongue for about 2 minutes. That's also the second best way to get it into your bloodstream, is under the tongue, sublingual, okay? You can also just drink it. So like if you have a stomach, if you get food poisoning, it's a great thing just to drink it. You can drink it, you can nebulize with it, you can put it in a spray bottle. This is silver. Spray it in your eyes, right? Great for pink eye. Kills it like quick. That's what my kids use their whole life. Right here. And you can put it in an eyedropper. Right here. You can put it in your ears for earwigs. So if you get swimmer's ear, if you're diving in the ocean, you're a scuba diver, you're in chlorinated water, you've got an ear infection, right here. Best stuff you can use right here. So those are a couple ways to use it. You can even use it as a colonic. So some people use them as suppository. You know, I'm not going to get into that whole thing, but there are people that use it that way. And you can even put it where it'll do some really good. Anyway, I'll let you go on that one. I wanted to talk a little bit about the wire one more time. So this is silver wire. It comes in a roll. Okay, you can see that. You buy it in a roll, and then you just straighten it out and you cut it to your length to fit it so that it just sits above the top of the wood. And the reason why you use wood is because it's an insulator. It doesn't conduct electricity, so you don't want to use a metal top. I wouldn't use plastic either. And you put it in, and then you can put your wire through the wood because it doesn't conduct electricity through it. Okay, because you don't want to arc yourself out. You cut your rods to the length that you need it so that it just sticks out above the top of the wood and about maybe an inch or half an inch, 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the glass, just so it doesn't touch the glass. It's not super critical on the length, okay? The more silver you have in there though, the faster it'll be, the more ions you get. This is 10 gauge, okay? I use 10 gauge. You can use 12 gauge, a little bit thinner. You'll go through it faster. I like the 10 gauge, it's a little bit easier to use. You can get it straighter and you can bend it a little bit more and it holds up a little bit more. A set of rods will last me a year, depending on how much silver I'm doing. Since we don't take it every day as a natural supplement, like a lot of people do, we just take it when we need it. Those rods, these are the same rods that I had probably for the last couple years now, because we haven't been having to make much of it. We're not getting sick very often, thanks to vitamin D. What? Thank you, there you go. So these will last you a long time, and you can see, so if this little 10 gauge wire will last you for a year, you're not putting a lot of silver in your body. You're putting a lot of ions in your body, but not a lot of silver, okay? So you're not gonna take this much silver in probably 2 years, maybe 3 years, okay? So that's that. Nebulizer, the wire, how long it lasts, how to use it. I think we're all good. So now I promised you a story. So back a few years ago, I had a neighbor that she was in her 80s. Her husband had died, so she used to call me over to help her do projects around the house. And one day she calls me, says, "Hey, Darrin, can you come over and help me with my computer?" I said, "Sure." I went over, and as I'm working on her computer, I hear her on the phone with her doctor, and she's a little bit upset, getting kind of irritated, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, yeah, sometimes you have health issues and you get a little bit upset about it. And when the conversation was over and she comes back over, I asked her, I go, "Hey, what was that all about?" And she says, "Well, I've been on antibiotics for about 3 months because I have valley fever, and the antibiotics are not curing me. They're not fixing me. I can't continue taking antibiotics because I've been on them too long. So the doctor's taking me off, but they don't know what they can do for me. They said there isn't anything more they can do for me." So I asked her, I said, are you open to naturopathic medicine at all? And she said, well, as long as it works. She was willing to do anything at that time. So long story short, I go over to the house, I get some of my silver, put it in like a little 8-ounce plastic jar. I think it was like an orange juice bottle or something, whatever. I had cleaned it out and whatever. I brought it over to her and I said, look, take about 3 or 4 capfuls, just a little bit, you know, a day. One in the morning, noon, afternoon, evening, or maybe before you go to bed. Put it under your tongue, hold it for 2 minutes, see how it does. The very next day, she was outside in her yard mowing her lawn. She hadn't been outside for almost 3 months. She hadn't felt well enough to. Consequently, she calls me up. She says, hey, can I have some more of that stuff? I said, well, sure. And so I started making silver for her. I've had stories and stories of people who have been helped by Ionic Silver and Colloidal Silver as well. For strep throat, mononucleosis, pneumonia, the flu, all kinds of things. The shingles, you name it. I mean, there's a lot of things that silver will help do. So anyway, that's my little spiel. This has been about 2 hours now. So I'm going to check our rods real quick. I'll show you how I do that. First, we're going to check to see what our TDS, get my mic out of the way here. We'll check the TDS real quick and see what the solids are. Right now it's still showing 0 on here. So all I do is I just kind of pull this out of the way, throw my tester in there, and lo and behold, it's still showing 0, which it should. That means that it is still working. And sometime tomorrow I should be hitting 1 or 2, because I'm only going to run this till I go to bed, and then I'm going to go to bed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and pull my rods out real quick. And I'm going to wipe off the silver oxide. The more you do this, the faster your silver will go. I typically don't like to stand in here every hour and do it. Some people like to do it every 20 minutes. I'm not that diligent. So I clean it off. You can see the silver oxide on the thing. There's not much. So then I put this back in. It's kind of my little technique. I hold it with this finger, and I hold this one with this finger. I take the black, I take it off of here, put it on there, and then I grab the other one with the other 2 fingers, and I pull this one out. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll clean it. Just get some of the silver oxide off, and there it is. Silver oxide, right? Put this in here, and you can see it's bent a little. So I like to have the bent kind of going away from the outside of the glass. And now I will put the red on here. I'll check to make sure that my rods are where I want them. There we go. And notice I switched the black and the red on the silver rods. So we should be good to go. Put my light shield on, plug in the transformer, my bubbler, and I'm good till I go to bed. Then when I get ready to go to bed, I'll come in and turn it off, and in the morning, I'll check it again, clean the rods, and I'll go until I hit 5 parts per million on my TDS tester. Now there's another TDS tester that you can get. This is the one I used for years. It finally went bye-bye on me. But it is the Primo family automatic calibration. It's from Hanna Instruments. It's a really good tester. It lasted me about 8 or 9 years. They're about $80 or something like that. This one here, it's about $12 or $13. So pretty cheap. The transformer is about $10, I think, on Amazon. The air pump, a few bucks. Nebulizers are about $35. You could literally have a whole system here for under $100. And the cool thing is, distilled water only costs, what, a couple dollars for a gallon? And you can make probably 3 batches of silver, which will last you and your whole family for a whole winter. It's cheap. Cheap, 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 cheap. And then I've been using the same transformer that I've had for years. I haven't had to change it out. And I have another one just in case this one ever goes bad, but it's never gone bad. So anyway, so there's my spiel. I want to say one more thing, a disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice. So if you have any questions at all, you need to consult a physician before you ever take any type of treatment like this, or vitamin D even, because there are people that have underlying health issues that they want to make sure that they're working with their doctor and their healthcare professional, whether it's a naturopathic doctor or a regular doctor. So, you know, I'm not a doctor. This is not a cure, but it can help. There's a lot of evidence. I'll put some links on below where you can go look up the clinical studies for yourself. You can do your own research and make your own decision. All right, well, that's it for now. Be safe, social distance, rock on.